Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wheel Tapping. This episode is going to be number 7, and today, if you're looking online, you can already tell we're covering 1880. I am super excited. If you know anything about my history in gaming and everything, you'll know that 1880 is on top of my list. I just love it to death. It's one of my favorites, so enough said. Let me get over to Tony. Mr. Tony Fryer, how are you doing today? Kind of sneak
Hello,
down
sir. I am doing excellent.
You're doing excellent?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not. All right. So Tony is joining me, and we decided we wanted a special guest this time. So we got the one, the only, Ambie Valdes is joining us tonight so we can talk everything about 1880. So I think I came out publicly in when we did our top 5 video of 1800s that this was by far my favorite, and I believe right now that hasn't changed. I think it's still firmly up there. I think some other spots have changed, but you know, hey, spoilers. We may have to do an episode on that in the future. Who knows?
Top lists are so hard, though.
You know, and that's why I think, especially with 18XX, I think they kind of tend to be a little more stable than other ones because, I don't know about you, but my exposure to them is not that great. I get to play the ones. That's a great shot of your fan there, Tony.
Yeah, man. Oh, my camera wants to be foolish.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
It wants to be Tony-less and full-ish. You just want to show off your awesome wheel tapping t-shirt. I see that.
Wonder where I got that.
Oh, I wonder. Some nice guy must have handcrafted that for you. Yeah. It's not that exciting. It's called a
I'm easily amused, as you know.
You are. And you know what? That's one of the reasons why I think we get along, because I'm self-amusing. So it works very well.
Well,
awesome.
That could be a joke, but I'm not going to go there.
Thank you. And thank you very much for that. I certainly appreciate it. So real quick, why don't I like to start off these because we're going to get into what we're playing in a second. But real quick, for those of you who may not know you, Ambie, what kind of, I don't want to say cred because you don't have anything to prove to us. We're happy to have you, and you belong here, so you don't need creds to get in. But what's your like 18XX history, I guess is the best way to ask it.
So I started playing 18XX in 2016, I think, with my friend and my husband. So my friend had played like once before, but we were basically all beginners, and we played with 18AL, and we had to learn with the rule book. Which was pretty tough. But then like we played it and we all loved it. And then my husband, Toby, really likes like getting into things when he starts doing something. So he researched a lot and online and learned about all the different 18XX games and gotten to win some games too. And so he did all the research on which games to get and stuff. So we bought a bunch of games and then started playing more and more. And then I've started doing a lot of 18XX stuff, like making content for 18XX.
Right.
Like I have a series on the Dice Towers YouTube channel about 18XX games, and I also make song parodies, and I made a musical.
Which was pretty epic.
Yeah, so yeah.
Awesome. You also, I believe, even visited Flip Flory's show and did a Disney 18XX crossover,
yes.
Which I found highly entertaining.
Yeah.
And it makes
and I have a podcast.
I actually want to make an 18XX game like set in Orlando. And I think you could like set it up as like modes of transportation because you have like, well, you can walk there, tram there. You can take the train there. You can take the monorail because Shelbyville has a monorail. Why can't we? So.
Yeah,
I think there's the mouse ears that make a great logo on a token.
Right. No trademark infringement if they're just slightly off, right?
They won't mind.
Right. So you know what? I will try and hunt down all the series that you did for the Dice Tower because you did a very good like introductory series for them. It was more like designed to help people kind of get going and get up and running. And I think that if that's your stage and you're kind of 18xx curious, that is a awesome place to start. So I will try and link all them in the comments so you all can get to that, because
There's actually a playlist with all of them in there, so you can link
so
that.
even easier.
Awesome.
I like it when you make my life easy. That's just, then it might
That's what
actually
we're all here for.
Awesome. So, and I think you all know Tony now. Plays of 1880, I probably am sitting at around 8 to 9. Mr. Tony, how many did you have? You have Sace.
Sace.
Okay. And I think Ambie's pretty close to that, aren't you, Ambie?
I have 9. I think it's really 8.5
Right.
because one of them we stopped partway through.
Oh, we don't care. Well, if you called it, you called it. That's life. That's a full game, in my opinion.
Okay, 9 then.
But not like 46, where you call it after the when you could call it after the private auction and go, nope, you're gonna win, you're gonna lose, you're gonna win, you're gonna lose. It's not that kind of calling. Although in retrospect, I did call a game of 62 that way because I did not get a minor in a 3-player game in Moscow, and they're like, we're just gonna mop the floor with you. We should not. Let's redo this. Thank you, players who did that, by the way. Kelly, I'm looking at you. So, all right. So what we are talking about tonight is 1880, which is China. Now, I have to read from my notes because I don't have all this stuff memorized. Helmut Oli and Lonnie Argler put this out, and they have O&O Games. So they put this out in, I believe, 2010 was when it came out. And it's one of the higher play counts because this will play from 3 to 7 players. And we'll get into that later, how it feels at higher counts, because it may surprise you, actually. It will last a long one. This is a game day, 5 to 6 hour game. My crew plays fast. We can get this done on a school night. If it is set up, ready to go on the table when everybody gets there at 6 o'clock, we can probably get it done by 11. So it's right in that ballpark. Now,
Certainly seen much longer ones.
Oh yeah, it can definitely get long because there can be a lot of blocking and there's a lot of stall opportunities. The way the stock rounds work has a habit of, if that just keeps getting pushed, that will slow the game down because people like ORs, and who doesn't? And then apparently Scuttlebutt is, at the time of this recording, which is the end of March in 2020, is that Lookout Games is on tap to do another version of this coming soon. But we've heard, I've heard some semi-official, but I haven't seen any action on it or recent talk at this time. I think it's likely, but not sure. So I wouldn't go, let's put it this way, I wouldn't sell my copy yet.
No.
Well, I wouldn't sell my copy anyway, but
Yeah.
So because I actually my copy for this, I corner clipped everything, which is a lot because all the permits, all the trains, everything, you're just sitting there punch. Yeah. Well worth
Psycho
it.
Chris.
It's gorgeous, but a lot of work. So let's move right on. So Tony, do you want to kind of walk us through how this compares to our traditional 1830 style games?
No.
Okay.
Oh, no.
You don't have to. I can do all the talking. That's just
all
no
the
fun.
talking. Well, maybe a couple points stand out, right? Like the private auction is different than 1830 because in this one, you auction them off, sequentially. It's not like that waterfall auction that 1830 has.
Right.
And there are some other differences with the privates, like they're never sold to companies.
There are more abilities
floating,
afforded to players, correct?
Yeah. The floating of the major companies, I think, is really cool and a difference from 1830 in this one because of the variable percentage needed to float the companies depending on what phase you're in.
Right.
So it goes from 20%, 30%, 40%, 50% as the game goes on to float the companies. And
Right.
Of course, only, that at the beginning of the game, you only have to buy like the presidency, to get it going. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. You can put a lot of companies in play in this game.
Sure. Other than that, I think the stock round is not your traditional 2 ORs in stock round. I mean, we'll get a little bit more into the mechanic of that later as it comes up. But I think it's pretty fun to watch how the train rush actually controls the stock market play.
Oh, yeah, fun and very, very unique.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that kind of sets this one apart that I really, really love. That and the turn order and how it's determined is not your traditional walk through a stock market and pick who's running, because it's not going to be that way.
You know,
There's a lot of things. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go for it. Go for it.
There's a lot of things in 1880 that are different from your traditional 18XX game. Basically, everything you can talk about is different.
That's fair.
It has trains.
Well, there you go. And they have numbers.
They have numbers.
There's no algebra on the trains. Yeah. No, that's not true, because there are pluses.
Yeah, there's plus signs.
And there's letters, so I'll just stick my foot in my mouth now. We're done. So sure, there are a ton of differences. The tile set is nothing too crazy. There's the stock tiles are pretty standard to choose from, so you don't have anything like super crazy with that as well. So cool. So why don't we just kind of go into the yellow phase right away, because this will help us get talking about the map and the market. So this is going to be where we're going to really talk about the meat of the market and what sets this map apart. Because to me, the map is nothing super crazy, but the market has some really fun things going on in it. So let me bring that up. So there we go. So the map. Ambie, you said you had a couple points on the map earlier before we got started that you kind of liked. What were those? Because I think they were cool.
Yeah, one thing I like about the map is you see the towns with the circles around them.
Right.
Oh yeah, you're pointing to them. Yeah.
Yeah,
So when you lay, oh wow, fancy. Okay, when you lay a track there, you get to choose whether you want it to be a town or a city, and that's really neat because the trains, like some of the trains are regular trains, but some of them are like 3+3 or 4+4 trains, which count. The number after the plus is cities or towns. I mean, sorry, little towns. So like you can build a route with a lot of dits in it if you want to use a 4+4 train. And I think that's neat.
Right. And I think, a lot of what we're trying to do is when you're creating these routes, you do want those little tight runs, but it's so nice to be able to just pick up dits along the way. Awesome. So the map is pretty straightforward. I don't really have, Beijing is really the hub. And the cool thing about Beijing is it doesn't go through, I want to say, until gray. It is a dead end for a very long time.
Yeah, it's big money.
Yeah, and it gets high. I think it goes up to 10. So if you don't have a token in Beijing, you're gonna have problems, because that is the big mama jama. There are some cool tiles. There's some basic, I want to say end tiles and things, because they have the two city dots on them. But other than that, it does have a decent amount of water and mountains. But if you are worried about that, then you just get the private that reduce those costs.
That's right.
Yeah, because there's a water private, there's a mountain private, there's also a ferry private. Because over here on the East Coast, there are a couple ferry routes here, and the HKR down here at the bottom is going to really want that, because that's its way into Beijing. So
yeah, man, I think the ferries are pretty cool.
Yeah,
is this the only game with that kind of a mechanic? It was the first time I've seen it anyway.
Well, aside from something like OE. But OE handles it differently, because the ferries aren't just a money reduction, they're a stop reduction, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
that
you
makes
lose
good
a
sense.
stop if you go in C zones, things like that. But this one they flat out cost you $10 every time you run. So at the beginning of the game, yeah, that stinks. But later on, and if you have the ferry private, they're free. So, and that's free for all your companies.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, good stuff there. Other than that, the map kind of has this one thing sitting over here on the side, And I think now's the time to kind of discuss it. So in the let me keep going here on the display so I can show you. So down the left-hand side of the board, we have 3 columns. One is shaped like a little train that your little train icon goes into. The next 2 are for your company markers, and they kind of slide to show that you've acted or not. So basically, they'll just slip and slide. They're also grouped in, there's 4 at 100, 4 at 90, 4 at 80, 4 at 70, etc. And what that means is that is going to be the turn order for the entire game. So the first person in at 100, well, the BCR, will be right up there. And then that guy will always be the top of the order. And then whoever is the second person to bar company at $100 will slide in second. So this is a game where you can strategically par value yourself so that potentially you could run back to back. So you can have 2 companies help each other out. You can also kind of set your turn order up so that you benefit from when the stock round is going to hit. So if you know, because you know when the operating round is and where you'll come back in the order when play resumes after a stock round. So you can par it so you run ahead of another company, buy a train out, and then clear the way for what runs after it. So there's a lot of fun, and I think we'll get a lot deeper in shenanigans. But if you're looking on the side of the board, that's what you're doing.
Well, and you can see there's only 4 spots, so only 4 companies are going to par at 100.
Exactly.
4 at 90. You know, that can be important.
It absolutely can, and it's funny to watch. You know, it kind of fills up high, and then everybody starts to kind of start filtering down out into the lower ranks after that. Once the dog fight's over, and then they start doing that. And why do they want to do that, Tony? Are you reading my mind yet? Do y'all know?
Not yet.
Not yet. It's because of the stock market. Because this stock market it looks normal, but folks, it's not. It's not, and it's not in such a lovely way. I love it, and I don't know of any other game that does this. You know, Ambie, you talked earlier about this one just does whatever the heck it wants. I think this falls in that category, right? So what we're looking at is we're looking at the stock chart, and there's vertical columns like a normal stock chart. It looks pretty much paced exactly like, say, an 1830 chart is. Same amount of stairs and ledges, not too exciting. But then there's groups of 2 or 3 columns. And in these groups, you get a bonus payout. So if you actually, like, for instance, take a $100 company, pay twice, jump forward twice, you now get a $5 bonus every time you run. Same thing, if you keep pushing it up to $125 value, you're going to get 10, and then it goes up to 15, and then it goes up to 20. It's beautiful because it's just free money. It's absolutely
so much
free
money.
It's weird. That's what it is. I think it's weird.
It's weird.
But,
it is weird. But
I love it because I calculate my run and I'm like, then I look over the chart and I'm like, I'm in $10 bonus town.
I'm like,
Right
look how
on.
much I'm getting. I'm getting so much. And then other people are also getting a lot too.
Right. And I think it helps. I think it's a very interesting way to kind of help you want to move stock forward. Because I think there are times when people don't, and maybe they want to trash things and whatnot. But I think this is an interesting way to kind of incentivize people to kind of try and push their stocks forward and keep growing. Because otherwise, if you're not doing it and somebody else is, you're paying out.
But, you know, the market here is not, it's quite tame anyway, right? So, you know, I can sell I can sell a bunch of shares and it only goes down 1.
Right.
You know,
And it also penalizes you for selling shares by selling it for cheaper than it's worth.
Yes. Right. Good call. So, you get the low value. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, and you have to pay a broker fee, right? Don't you?
Yeah, I believe so.
Or is that what you're talking about?
I think that's what she's talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't get the low value in this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep. The brokerage fee. You got to pay $5 a share.
Yeah, it's definitely discourages shenanigans. To the point there's no
on the
yellow
market.
zone, right? There's no share share zone. There's no company closure areas. We don't have any of that on this chart. It's pretty much I want to call it a forward momentum chart. It's just designed to just propel you forward.
Yeah.
I also think it's a little interesting to kind of talk about ownership because, we're talking about payouts and things like that. This is one of those games where you can own 100% of your company. And it's partial cap, so you may need to self-fund in any event, but it also means you can be getting a lot of payout, and those bonuses can really add up. So, if you see somebody kind of running away and they have all their shares, the only thing you can do is try and catch them.
Yeah. I think
Agreed.
another interesting thing about the market here that we might talk about later too is in communism, there's no movement in the market. So you want to get over to the right, but then communism happens and there's no movement at all. So if you can get over to the right before communism happens, then that's really good.
Communism. You know what? I think we're going to label communism just a big shenanigan.
Yeah.
Well, I think it is in real life too.
So more on that coming because I think communism and the way you can leverage it and use it, again, it's one of those very interesting things that happens in the game itself. Yep. All right.
Yeah. But Chris, on your point about owning 100%, I love it when games do that and you can own 100%. It's like, all right, I just made, 280. Yeah, I'll keep it,
Yeah. And I tell you, it's hard as a player to do both sides, right? Like to either watch you do that and then have a great company running for lots of money. But it's also hard to just hand your company money for a couple shares. Like there's that hard thing where, okay, I realize it's an attack on your company for me to buy shares of it. I get that. But at the same time, there's that thing where I'm still giving you money. So there's that struggle, that internal struggle that happens with our capitalist self, I think. I can help you or I can help me. But if you're 80% invested, you're 80% more likely to help yourself. So
that's fair. But somebody owns 80%, they're not likely to hoard.
Right, exactly.
So I will help them help me.
Now, do you all have anything to add about the map or the market before we move on?
Maybe just one slight thing is there's really kind of not an open market necessarily, right? Like shares,
like a bank pool and
yeah, like things go back to the IPO, so
right. But things are always traded at the market value, correct?
And things are always traded at market value, yeah.
So even though it technically is an IPO of 100, it did not sell all of its shares. It still trades at the market price. So
yeah.
We talked about that. We talked about the cap. Do you want to talk about the? I think we should probably also discuss building permits because I think this is a good time as any.
Well, yeah, I think if you got to wrap that conversation with the variable president certificates, though, too.
Absolutely. So when you start a company, you have the choice to buy a different size presidency. Now, at different stages, as Tony said earlier, during different stages, those presidencies are required. But at the beginning, you have the choice to run, you can choose because what you're going to get is a permit that will let you lay tile for one of the 4 phases of the game, or 2 of the 4, or 3 of the 4. But nothing gives you all 4. Yeah. And how much you
unless you get that one mine or that one private.
Right.
As the D phase.
Yes.
So, and I've seen the BCR still laying track in D because of that.
Yes.
But the whole idea is that if you want more of a president share, if you want the bigger one, so you can have a 40% certificate, but you're only going to get to be able to build in one zone, right? So that way, you're saying, like, I'm just going to run this company, build track right now, and either it needs help from my other companies or it's just a bankroll for something else. But then you have a 40% president certificate, so you don't have to deal with 2 extra shares and butting up against certain limit. So
Yeah, it's certainly an advantage to get a lot of percentages in one certificate.
sure.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, you're only going to build track in one phase, so it does come with a cost. It does create some other um, phenomena in the game too, right? Like if you start a company with a 40% presidency, it's much safer for me to invest in that company now because I have to own a higher percentage for you to,
Right.
gift me with that company.
Yeah.
So, I can hopefully get a share of your victory points. Thank you.
Exactly. And you know what? I think you bring up a good point because I don't see a lot of company movement, but there's definitely times when it would make sense to absolutely dump something because,
Oh yeah.
but I think that's the nature of incremental cap games anyway, right? It's
Well,
a,
this one's incremental in a weird way, and I do
Yeah.
see companies change hands in 1880, at least with
Oh,
our
good.
group, because it's what is it, the 3 train or the 4 train or something? It's the first 3 train. That's what it is.
right.
You only half your shares are available, and you get
Mhm.
half your capitalization when you
Right.
float.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've sold over 50%, you can get the other half of your capitalization.
Yeah.
But
So
you never get that second half to that 3 train's been popped. So it's
Mhm.
I don't really think of it as incremental. 'Cause I
right.
think
It's
of that
almost
as
like
one
a
share.
dual.
I think of it as half
Like
cap.
half
Yeah.
cap.
No.
Yeah.
You know what? Very good point. I think it's like a half cap, full cap.
Yeah, it's
Um,
bigger increments.
right.
Yeah.
So it kind of
And
helps
you have
hold
to
you back a little.
And you have to sell 50% of the shares to get the full cap once
Yeah.
the 3 trains are out.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
And
Thanks for clarifying that. If I was being a little wishy-washy on that.
yeah, no worries. It's a good mechanic actually.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I also think that it kind of helps make this kind of new player friendly because it doesn't like throw $1,000 right at you at the beginning of the game. Like it gives you
Yeah.
500. You got to work a little bit to get the next.
Yeah.
Buy your shares, get up to the 5, and then you can get the rest of it. So I think it kind of is a little gentler that way than just having to. I don't know, playing regular like 1830 incremental cap games right off the bat can be a bit of a challenge sometimes.
And then also that way you don't spend all your money right away.
Yeah.
And
Have a ton of
later
cheap
when you
trades.
need more money, you get, oh, yay, I just got a bunch of money.
There you go.
Second issue.
$50 for mountains? Oh, I don't care about that. That's no problem.
Yeah.
The other fun thing is to watch building permits because especially late in the game, somebody is just building. He's going crazy, and then all of a sudden, this company that was having great runs and building some great cities is now unable to build and at the mercy of other people. And I think you can really get kind of caught out, especially if you are by yourself down in a corner or something. I see this happen down in the southeast corner of this map a lot. There's a lot down there, Hong Kong and everything. But I've seen players run out of permits and then not be able to move anything. And everybody's like, well, I'm not going down there to build track. Why should I bother upgrading anything? So
I love the building permits. I think they throw a couple of wrenches at us, right? Like one is you can get a lot of companies going in this game, and so it does serve to increase the pace of the game because not every company's laying track every time, right? So
Right.
some of the companies' turns are going to go quicker, but it also gives you a new way to think about the synergies, like starting 2 companies and helping each other build track takes on a whole different meaning and sometimes necessity in this game,
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely want your companies to work together. And you want like one company to have the ABC permit and then the other one to have like CD or whatever, depending on what president share you get.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that'll help you even get greedy with those certificates later on too.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then I think you know what? We're still here. I'm gonna keep it going, right? Because I think now's the time we need to kind of talk a little bit about the foreign investors. So
I was thinking that. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of
They
feel
also
the need.
help build track.
Exactly. So they do two parts. So if you look on the map I have on the screen, you'll notice some country flags throughout the map, and they're littered all around the perimeter of it. But when I brought up Hong Kong, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, that's right. There's like a bunch down there too. So what they are is a French investor is very interesting because it's not like it's a minor, it's not like it's a private. It's just this bag of money that's just sitting there waiting for you to get it. Like that's really all it's doing. And I've seen
Yeah.
people wait and have and get like, permanent train money out of a foreign investor because every time it runs, it basically just keeps pays and pays you, pays it, and it just keeps piling on its charter. And then finally, when one of your companies connects to that investor, all that money will go into the company, and then the player gets $50
Yes. And a share.
and a share.
Yeah, the
Because
share.
when you start a company, you have to put one share on the foreign investor's charter.
Right,
Mhm.
which
And then when you
denotes the
connect,
one
you
that
get
it's
that share.
connecting. Yep.
Yeah.
So
So I'm
go ahead.
interested in hearing what's your strategy on foreign investor? Are you because there's two ways, right? Like I am going to connect as soon as I can and get that share, money be damned, or am I going to milk it and just pile up money? How do you guys play?
So when the first few games I played, I wanted to connect really quickly. And then later I tried doing the like getting a lot of money strategy and wait as long as I can to connect it. And I think I might like that one more just because it seems more fun trying to get the most money out of the foreign investor. And also like I like the top left foreign investor.
Oh, the
The
Russian.
Russian one?
Yes, because I try to get the trans.
Oh,
There's
yeah,
a
the
route to go
Trans-Siberian.
from. Yeah, if you go across the map, you get bonus, and you can do that with the foreign investor. So that's just fun to try to get it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you make the Russia to Vladivostok run, which
Yeah.
if you're following at home and you look on the board, it's what 5 hexes away, and you're like, oh, that's easy. I could do that in a minute, and then you actually start laying track, and it doesn't take a minute.
Yeah. Also, like the foreign investor uses whatever the latest train or whatever train is out, and see all those dits that are kind of in the way, so it's tough to get that route.
It is.
And
It
then you
really
get
is.
greedy and you swoop
Yep.
down and get that city and
Exactly.
Chris,
But no, you're right.
how do you
I don't know. I think the foreign investors are fun. I've played them both ways. I I think it depends on what's happening in my game.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm in a knife fight like right inside Beijing and that $50 early is going to really help me, then I'm going to be inclined to probably try and get it and hook up faster, get over there because Japan is right nearby that I can get there. If you have the QSR in Japan, you can get there in like a turn. It's just very fast because they're like literally like right on top of each other.
Yeah.
You can just go yoink right in and you're connected and you get your 50 and a lot of people are happy with that because if you can do more with that 50 than you could with the train that it's running, it's worth it. But if you can't, then it's not. And then it's but there's always that person who like halfway almost to the end of the game and I just connected. I'm like, what? And they just pulled this stack and you're just like, oh, here's the mop. Just gonna mop us up with that.
I'm
yeah.
kind of the flip side of Ambie. Like I used to play by delaying it, try to pile up the money. But the last 2 times I played, I went the opposite route. I'm just trying to connect as fast as possible and get that certificate out of there and start earning that dividend. And the $50 doesn't hurt either. $50 in the beginning of the game. Shoot, that's halfway to a share.
Yeah, and
or
you
more.
don't start with a ton of cash in this game.
So my strategy is now I just go right away, like foreign investor, see ya, bye.
Right, because
But I think
if we're
another
playing, yeah, if you're playing a 4-player game, you're starting with $480, and that also has to buy your privates. So
Yeah.
that's,
but you only need 20% to float.
you do. I mean,
Right.
you're still probably going to open a company. You're going to get a private, and you'll be able to do some stuff for sure. But it's not like you're sitting there with a ton of cash on stock round 2, going, all right, let's do stuff. You're like, no.
But then another advantage to waiting with the foreign investor is that it can build track. And we mentioned how building track can be difficult with the permits. So if you still have the foreign investor there, it can build track. It doesn't need a permit. It's just building track every turn. So if you can synergize that with your other company, that's really good.
Right.
That's a good call.
So you could theoretically buy a permit for the next round. If you're in A, you could buy a BC permit and your foreign investor.
You can't. You wouldn't have any track then, because once you hook up to the foreign investor, then it's gone.
Yeah, so you got to time that right. But I've also seen delays like that where people will buy an AB and then buy a BC and then not lay. So it's there's a lot of stuff, and we are even out of the gate, folks. As we come into let's push on through to the green phase. So the green phase, we are going to be talking about trains and stock rounds. So you already know what happens during a stock round. It's all the same normal stuff that we always do. But the trains and the way they trigger with stock rounds is a little different. So stop me if you've heard this before, but I don't think you have. So when we look at our map, which I'm going to put up on screen, we have that group down the left-hand side of our maps, which has where our trains, the train column, and then you have our 2 placement columns. So if a token is in the first column and then a token's in the second column, then it obviously is operated. Now, as we go down this order, if a company buys a train, we move the train token down to the company that just bought a train. That means that if nothing else happens and nobody buys any trains and we keep running all the way around the order and we get back to that company, then that triggers a stock round. So it also does a few other things that are kind of interesting, but the bare minimum, it's going to trigger that stock round, and then you have it. So the stock round can be a moving target. And if somebody is just delaying because they don't have enough cash to get to a stock round, or they want to run their company one more time, you can play with this. And that's why knowing the turn order and how set in stone it is in this game is clutch. Do you think that's fair?
I do. And one of the cool things about when the stock round happens is any trains that are left of the current stack are out of the game. So it's moving the train deck along too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which that can be a lot of trains if you have a stall.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's a very good thing.
Absolutely. So the trains, now Ambie, you kind of touched on it earlier. We have some fun trains. We have the pluses and we have the regulars, and we have diesels, correct?
E train.
E, that's it. It's the E, not the D.
Those can just pick the best cities that they want to go to.
Right.
That they can hit.
Absolutely. What were you going to say, Tony?
There's one more thing that triggers the stock round, and that is the purchase of the last train of a type.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So there's 2 ways, you can get into the stock round. And I'm pulling out my 1880 rules here because, isn't this the game that the stock round interrupts the OR, right? So if I don't buy that train and the train is on me, we take them out of the game, we go to the stock round, then we come back and I finish my OR, i.e. I can buy the first train of the next type.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So very unique, very cool, and you can cause some great stuff to happen there.
Yeah. leveraging that system and knowing it is a ton of that whole menu on that left side, knowing either where your companies are and how to manipulate that stock round, I think is a huge, huge benefit to what you're actually going to accomplish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's I don't know of another game that does the breakup of ORs and SRs in this manner, and it's very unique and I think quite cool.
Yeah, and I think it kind of accelerates with the game because there have been times you can have 2 stock rounds before it even gets to you if your company's sitting at the bottom, and you're just sitting there and you just go to a stock round, you're like, I don't have any money again.
Yeah.
So, then it comes around again, and you're like, nope, things haven't changed. I still haven't even run yet. I have no money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you
it
really
could
want to
be
be the
harsh.
one triggering the stock round when you have a bunch of money and everyone else doesn't.
Yeah, and a lot of people take advantage of me for doing just that. So it's fair. So there is definitely a ton of stuff going on there. And again, communism comes into play because during communism, whenever you hold, you don't fall back. So there's all
Well,
of a
there's
sudden
no movement at all.
no movement at
What
all.
pay, sell, hoard?
Nope. So you see people with their companies on life support coming up right to that communism at the fore, right? And it's just like you're just sitting there and you're like, come on, you can do it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, communism, I can hold and not get punished for it. This is a game
It's a
where
license to hoard.
it is. It really is. And this is a game where you can literally play the entire time and not have to have a negative stock action. Because communism, if you time everything correctly during that phase, you can get all the money you need and then get your permanence and continue on your way. So
Yeah,
it does.
It's possible
it's
even
definitely
without withholding in communism,
Sure.
which I've done. Because with the foreign investors, if you get a lot of money in that, then you get that in and you can buy a permanent with that.
True.
yeah.
True. If you're the late investor holder, but I'm more of the life support guy who's kind of sitting there with his companies that are gasping for trains right at the end, right as communism, and you're just like, okay. So, funny thing though, that's really the only thing that kind of happens during communism. Am I correct? There's really not a lot. It just kind of freezes the stock market. Like the stock market shut down, and then it kind of reopens later on in the game. So
I think so, yeah.
yeah.
So it seems like a mechanic that allows the game to move forward without the players moving backwards.
Right. So it's no share price movement. It's no director share sales. So you can't open new companies. Privates don't pay any of their dividends. And foreign investors do not operate.
Yeah, they stop.
So, and that takes us all the way through. That's the first 4 train. And then it's not until the 6 is bought that we open back up. And then we open
That can
up.
go really fast.
Yeah.
And it can go really slow.
Yeah.
I've seen communism drag out.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I really don't.
But that's like with the way that you buy trains and how stock rounds start. Like there can be one person buying a train and no one else buying a train, and then it lasts forever. Or if no one buys a train at all, then the whole stack's gone, and then you're on to the next one. So
Right.
But it is an opportunity to increment your score over the other players, right? If your companies are in good shape, you're paying dividends and everybody else is hoarding.
Right. So definitely interesting. And then they do one thing in this game that I just want to point out. And that is once that 6 comes out, you get the Zombie 2, which we love, which the 2s come back and they're available, which are fun for $2.50. So if you have a really nice solid little 2 run down there that you can just keep dinking, you can have some fun with that one. So
the Zombie 2 train.
Yeah, we call it the Zombie 2 because it comes back from the dead.
Nice. I'm gonna have to call it that now too.
Good. Yeah, I get some of my isms out in the West Coasts because all time zones are represented almost, right? Oh, we need a mountain.
That's right.
We need a central. That's it.
I'm in the middle coast.
You are.
Hmm.
You,
The
you have
edge
a
of the
great ocean
Atlantic
view, and let's see. And then the second 8 is actually what triggers the end of the game, right?
Hmm.
Triggers the last OR, and then you do, or triggers a stock round, and then you do 3 ORs, and then your game's over. So, and that's phase D, which, to be honest with you, not a lot of permits are hanging around in D, because usually
Hmm.
people have opened what they're going to open. You have the one minor, which you can assign a D permit to any company you want. And then you also have maybe somebody opened a late company and got a D permit, but a lot of times those runs are pretty much, break out the spreadsheet and get them done. Not too much is changing. So, cool. Anything else on the stock rounds and trains, folks? Ambie, do you have anything?
Well, I just really like the train types. How there's the 3 and then the 3+3s. So there aren't that many of each of the trains of those trains that you want. And so if you're building out a track with a lot of dits and you want a 3+3, you have to time it really well to be able to get that 3+3 because they'll go away pretty quickly. And then you'll have to get a 4, which you don't want if you have a bunch of dits. So it's interesting just timing, like if you're building track for the dits, timing it to get that train that you want.
Right. So it's not like some other games where, for instance, in OE, you can buy either the 3 or the 3+3. It's like, no, you go through the 3s, then you go through the 3+3s, then you go through the 4s, and then you go through the 4+4s. So, yeah. And like you say, there's not that many. And usually
and there's a lot of companies.
Exactly. There are, which is awesome. I love it. It's just, this is a table hog extraordinaire. There's stuff everywhere. Cool. Tony, do you have anything to add, sir, on trains and stock rounds?
No, sir. No, ma'am.
No? All right. Moving on, because, we like our shenanigans around here. So, we kind of already touched on a couple of the big ones, the foreign investors and communism. So, what other shenanigans have you all run into in your plays, or what is something you particularly enjoy about this one?
Well, in the last time I played, my friend Kenny was visiting Denver, and so we had a big game day. We had like 16, 18 people in the house, and Kenny wanted to play 1880, so I got in on that. We had a 6-player game of it going. It was awesome, and he did a couple of things that I thought was really cool. He started a company in Beijing with a 40% presidency, and a later permit, or was it an earlier permit? I can't remember now, but then he started a company nearby to help it build track, and he got the rocket, and he stuck the rocket in there right away for the 2 train instead of waiting for later, and he's making money right away and everything. I thought that was taught me a couple things there. Thought that was a really cool opening.
So the rocket, if you're not familiar with the game, it's one of the privates you can get. So we talked a bunch about all the building privates and things like that, but there are 2 others. There's the BCR, which comes with the director share of the company, and it has a special power where it can always lay 2 yellow tracks, which is outside the norm. Now, the rocket is a 2 train that you can instantly throw in a company, so you can be running right out of the gate. So you don't have to do that typical slow open thing. So it's one of the last ones auctioned off, I think. Yeah.
It kind of like the more you wait, the bigger train you get. And so, I'm always like, oh, I want to wait. I don't want the 2 train. Kenny just put that 2 train right in there, and he was off to the races. He had a really solid opening.
It's really good as a 2 train if you have like a city, because most of the companies you can't get a route on the first one, but BCR and then the one in Beijing, I think there's one city right next to it so you can have a route. But those 2 companies you can combine with the rocket, and then you don't fall back. And that's really important in this game because you can get to the +5, +10s sooner. And if you get
To the
there and
bonus.
are able to start communism when everyone else is not in the plus fives, then that's like really, really good.
Right.
So,
Because
yeah.
you're just kind of hop skipping ahead of everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would also argue this is one of those games I don't usually try to play with the private auction too much, but I really don't like the person who buys the BCR to get the rocket, just because
Mhm.
that's just such a jump, and especially if they get a foreign investor that's in the South, where they can hook up real quick, like that person can be out and running right from the start. So I very few times will I actually actively, and maybe I probably by the time we're done this, the online game I'm playing that this is happening in as we speak will be done. But I'm like, I try to keep that out. I try to break those two up, and I don't usually ever try and do that stuff. Love the rocket. What else, Ambie? Do you have a favorite like shenanigan or MacGuffin about this game that you just kind of like really enjoy?
Well, we've talked about a lot of the ones
We have.
throughout this. So we already talked about. I like getting 100% of companies. That's fun. It doesn't happen very often, but it did once, and I was really excited about that. um, yeah, and then we've already talked about the foreign investors. I think that's cool. I like that the privates are player owned, and the powers apply to everything. That's kind of neat because then I like the ones that give you discounts, like the free ferry and the free, or like discounts on mountains and rivers, just because I like sales.
Yeah. I like them too. I just seem to buy them and then never build there. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, when I buy with them, and then I'm like, okay, I have to start a company that's over here,
Right.
or else I would have just
It's
bought
like
it in
nobody
vain.
ever opens the NXR first. I'm like, well, I have a mountain discount and I'm going to use it, darn it.
Sometimes I do things like that.
I understand. It makes sense. But when you start, if you're trying to come up in those southern routes, because there's a lot of water and there's a lot of mountains coming into Beijing. So
Yeah.
those mountain busters and things can help you get through some really tricky track.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, like what Ambie said, right? We talked a lot about foreign investors, the train permits, the variable sizes of the presidencies, the rocket, stuff like that. Like this game gives you some tools that you can put together in different combinations, and I think of that as a shenanigan in a way, right? Because
Sure.
it's going to make you think creatively about how you meld everything together. It's not necessarily a shenanigan that's evil or hurtful or juggling money around, those kind of shenanigans, right? But it's like right up in here shenanigans, right? Like how can I put these things together and maximize what I'm trying to do and get that incremental gain? Like when Kenny opened that company with a 40% presidency, where'd that 50% go? In the foreign investor, nobody could invest in that company.
Right.
So, and he put the rocket in, so, you can do neat stuff. And
Yeah.
this game gives you those tools.
Yeah. It's really interesting how it has so many weird things and they all work together really well.
Yeah.
I can't say that there's huge, like, there's no like gaping hole in the middle of this, right? Like, even if you think something's weaker than something else, it's usually a bad decision based on like the company placement and tile. But that's usually it. It's not usually a product of the game or the funding. Like, they seem to have addressed all that stuff. Like, the funding's addressed through the half cap, we'll call it. I like that much better. So you have the half cap, feeding in money. You have the foreign investor that you can kind of pick and choose when you use it. But it also kind of gives you something to work for, because with so many companies out on the board, I think it's nice to have that direction. And I really enjoy it. And the off boards are actually pretty good on this one. There's some ones that get up, I'm looking down here, they get up into like the 60s and the 80s. So they're not, even if you go off board, it's not like you just pick up a little thing off board. You actually get something decent. So I think you can make a lot of fun runs. There's a lot of fun track to build in this game too. I think there's a lot of looking at things and trying to build the loops and get around, and how can I get into Beijing twice, and trying to get those. I think there's a lot of fun in that placement, and the permits allow you to kind of know who exactly you're having to deal with. It's not like you have to
Mhm.
always deal with that company. They may be done at a certain point, and you might not have to deal with them anymore, and you can just lay the track however you want. So I really like the track laying in this. This was probably one
Yeah.
of the first ones that really got me excited to try and play with the track and get the trains to run right and things like that. And I
Mhm.
just have a blast.
Down in that southeast corner, you can lay some interesting track against
Yes.
each other down there.
You can lay some stuff that's not fun for some people and very
Yeah.
fun for others.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think you're right too. There's a lot of restrictive track. Like there's a lot of double dits, which will never cross. I mean, they only cross and things like that. And the mountains make things expensive. So the track choice that you want may not be what you're able to afford, do, or get to at that moment. So
Mhm.
I have a lot of fun. I see a lot of tokens in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a big token heavy game, and I always find them
Oh.
fun because you gotta figure out, I gotta get one in there, and it's usually just a run through token. It might not even be a start stop. It's just I need to be able to get through there because the bypass is
Mhm.
going to take 3 rounds to build.
Yeah.
Well, that
You need to
makes
get
sense,
through
Chris,
here
because
to
the
get to
tokens are
Beijing.
pretty heavy.
Yeah, yeah, they are. They're really nice chunky tokens. Absolutely. What were you saying, Ambie?
I said, well, you need a token here to get to Beijing.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You don't just need Beijing. You need like the 3 lily pads to get there.
Yeah.
Lily
It's-
pads. Another phrase I'm going to have to commandeer.
Because it's just like hop.
Yeah, and in the late game, there's the 6Es and 8Es. So if you want to be able to run those, you need to be able to have a continuous route that's hitting big cities.
Absolutely. So I think it's a complete blast. Do you guys have anything else to add for shenanigans, tomfoolery, and otherwise fun stuff?
I think we've covered everything that I was thinking about.
Yeah, there's a lot, and we kind of, like I said, I think we kind of sprinkled it throughout the episode because that's the way this game plays. You can't talk
Yeah.
about one thing without talking about the other, without talking about the other, and then
Those things are, like I said, they're kind of intertwined, right? So it's hard to not talk about something in one phase of this show.
it's very true. It's very true. So cool. So while we're talking about that, I think now it's time to talk about the feelings. So Tony, I will let you you kind of lead off. I'll anchor this one. So what are your feelings overall about this guy?
Mainly super positive. I do find the game very fun to engineer my companies, if you will, and laying the track is also fun. You know, the tokens you guys mentioned, the track lays. I just enjoy, the every aspect of the game. You know, the non-deterministic stock rounds and stuff like that. Right? I rate this game very high personally. It's actually one of my favorite experiences to play with 6 players, and I generally don't want to play anything with 5 or 6 players and nothing like
That's fair.
But there are a handful of games if we have 6 that I'd play, and this is one of them. And at least in our group, we find the game to be faster with 6, which is kind of counterintuitive. I don't know. Maybe it's just because things are happening quicker or whatever. But for some reason, our group feels like this is a faster, better game with 6, and so every time we have 6, this is definitely one of the games that gets mentioned.
I think you tend to open almost the same amount of companies in a 6 as you do in lower player counts.
Just maybe quicker.
Right. So, but I think the problem lies in the fact that, sometimes a person can be going for multiple companies and maybe yours are kind of clumped. And then, so you just sit there and you just wait. So I think that can feel a lot slower, and I think it physically can be slower because we're not constantly moving through the order and changing people, and that also means that if I have 3 companies running in a row, I have to think about this one. Now I have to think about this one. Then I have to think about that one. Whereas if they're spaced out, I can think about this one, and then somebody else is going. Well, I can start thinking about my move and planning ahead and things. And I don't think you get that in a smaller player count. So I think that's why time dilates a little bit on this guy, if that makes sense.
There's also I haven't played it. I've seen it and I'm tempted to play it, but I haven't done it yet. But there's a short game variant too, with fewer trains, I think it is. And so you cycle through stock rounds and trains a bit quicker.
Okay.
It's out on BGG, and I don't know. It looks pretty cool. About the only negative statement I guess I have about 1880 is, I have seen the end game slow down with a lot of recalculation of routes, because Ambie just put that token there, and and stuff like that, and you can still do some upgrades there. Believe it or not, there's still companies laying track, right? Not all 16, but there's still companies laying track, and so I've seen that drag out a bit, but I don't count that against the game necessarily, right? Because there's so much more positive going on in the game. So yeah, I guess my final statement is, if Lookout really does print this and you don't have it, you should go buy it, because you'll like it.
Absolutely. Ambie, do you have any final thoughts and feelings on 1880?
Yeah, so I really like 1880 too. Also, 1880 also. So a lot of the games I play aren't the engineering type games, but 1880 is more of an engineering type game, but it has so many things going on. It's really interesting to me, even though I don't typically play engineering type games. So like I like the timing of the trains and like building the different track for those trains. I like the private companies. I like pretty much everything we talked about. I haven't played it at 6 players though. I mostly played at 4 players because that was our group. We would play like on Friday nights and like from 7 to midnight or something. But yeah, so now I guess if I have more players ever, I'll have to try it at 6 players because it's fun. I also like the art. I think it looks pretty compared to other games I have.
Yeah. Good call.
Yeah. It does a couple of cool things, right? Like the trains are like almost half certificate size, so they're a little easier to manage on the dinner mats, and the permits are around the same size. So I think that's a very good point. I like that, and good job. I couldn't agree more. I think you both kind of hit on everything I like. The track building, the laying, the kind of playing the game with the stock market, figuring out when you can build things and when you want to par companies at different values as things start to fill up. I think you can have a lot of fun with that. And sometimes, I think I'm not smart enough to manipulate the train rush as much as I would like in this game, but it's one I want to keep playing and keep playing with it, because, being able to make communism happen when you want it and it benefits you, I think, and other things like that are a lot of fun. I think communism is really cool in this one, and I think it's a lot of fun to kind of, play with what, you can do whatever you want to your company. It doesn't matter. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, game's on again. So I think that's a lot of fun.
Well, Karl Marx is happy. Finally, communism is fun.
This is about the only time it actually works, right?
What's about communism always get taken out of context when I talk about 1880 in my podcast.
Right on.
I love communism. It's great.
Yeah. So. Communism was too short.
Yes, it's funny because it's interesting because it always has I feel like it always has a different flavor, because I think sometimes it feels very long and other times it feels like, whoa, we ran through that. And I think there's a lot of timing and stock round issues that kind of create that. And, people opening companies right before it's about to trigger and getting a train. And, I think there's a lot of things you can do to kind of play with that. And like you say, I like abilities. I think the privates and the foreign investors work really well. That's another cool thing. Just you got a bank sitting right there. If you use it how you want, if you want to do it quick and dirty like Tony likes, or you like to take your time and milk it for all it's worth, you can do that too. So if you can't tell, it's number one on my list for a reason. It kind of scratches every single itch. And I think it's fair enough to say I'm not Mr. Stock Market guy. Like, I'm not in a rush to play 17 every time because I just get brutalized. But I can lay track. So that's why this one tends to be one of my favorites. And the stock market gives you bonuses, for crying out loud. It's like communism and bonuses in the stock round. What's not to love? Take that one out of context. Absolutely, right? So, any other feels? Anybody have anything else? Any thoughts as we're kind of wrapping up 80 here? No? All right.
Good to go.
Excellent. So we move on to the priority deal. So if you've watched the show at all, and I think 89 we talked about it, I first got introduced to special priority deal markers in a game from Tony when we were talking about this very game, and he sent me via the post office a little dragon that happens to look a lot like the cover. He's holding the ball. Love it. There you go.
Oh.
And
Man,
So-
I'm
so now Ambie
They're
needs
fantastic.
one.
yeah, I guess I need one. Well, I was born year of the dragon, so I'm just a dragon.
Me too.
There you go. I'm a
Yay.
rabbit.
I'll tell you what,
I'm
Ambie,
dragon food.
I get these at a local store in Denver. If you email me your address, when I get off a lockdown and I can go buy you one, I will send you one.
There you go. It's awesome, and it comes out every time we play.
Oh yeah.
And then, have you ever seen? Did you see the meme that somebody did with the cover of 1880?
No.
I wish I knew who did it. It was absolutely fabulous. But it kind of has the dragon walking with the ball, and then he trips and falls, and then the ball's falling out of his hand. So, which actually looks like the cover is like, oh, I lost my ball. It's pretty good. I'll put that up in the video for you.
There you go.
Because it's great. And
Edit
if
that
you
in.
did that and you want credit, email me. I'm happy to give it because it's outstanding. So last, I think we just kind of wanted to touch. I think it's kind of the elephant or the dragon in the room, as it were. Is what are we doing to game? We are currently, me personally in Pennsylvania, I'm on week 2 of lockdown right now. And I don't know, I think Colorado is pretty much timed with us. There's some other states that were a little slower to act. Not pointing anybody out here, by the way, but it's been tough. Can't get together, can't game. That Monday that we announced that we were closing, I had a game and I had 2 people who were like, should we come over? And I'm like, I want to say yes, but my wife works retail and she's still working at that point.
Okay.
So I'm like, for your safety, I'm not going to have you come over. So
Yeah.
we have not gamed. So I do a couple online games, async. I've yet to do one live, so I can't speak to that. So I'll play by email, play online. It's kind of, there's a couple systems for that. Board 18 and RR 18 are the two known system. Board 18 is just the board and stock market, and you have to run a spreadsheet. RR 18 is the full daddy, and I'll let Ambie talk about the exciting potentially third option coming at some later point, hopefully. So I'll let you bring that up. And that one, I actually got on it today and it worked really smooth and quick, which kind of scared me. I'm like, why is this going so fast? But usually it's pretty slow, which is kind of, it's a lot of people. It's a private server. I get it. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying you will not be playing live that way. And I also know that people play, and there's a couple games on Tabletopia and things that have been put in, but I'm not paying for anything else, so I don't have any of those subscriptions. So I can't speak to them, unfortunately. So, Tony, what have you been doing? Yeah, point.
Well, I've always been staunchly anti-online gaming, because for me, part of the fun is being around the table, right? Like I'm sitting here talking with 2 very cool people, right? And that's what I want around the game table too. But over the last couple of weeks, I have played live on Zoom on board 18. So we're
Okay.
playing right now. You make your turn, then I'll go, and then we're not doing this. Hey, I'll email you when I'm done, and you can take your turn sometime, maybe next week. I hope. No, not going to do that. I've enjoyed it.
Okay. Excellent.
Hey, it's not the same, right? It's sitting at the table.
No. You're not playing with
but
your
it's cool,
chips,
right?
and you're not,
What's that?
Yeah.
You're not sitting there fiddling with chips and
Not filling with chips.
Yeah.
You don't have to wear pants. All that great stuff, right? But it does allow us to connect with our friends that also can't come out of their houses,
right.
And to play these great games that we love. So I think I've played like 4 or 5 games now, but I've also just hung out for 2 or 3 others and not played and just kibitzed with the folks and stuff like that. And I dig it. I'm a big fan. And hey, when this virus stuff hopefully one day goes away, will I keep playing on board 18? Probably not.
Right.
Unless it's with long distance friends, right? Like
Right.
and but no, probably not. I'll return to the table. But this has been a very helpful and friendly, cool thing to do.
Awesome. So, and I think we were kind of chatting earlier, and maybe we'll get back to this, but I think we're actually going to do a show just on, gaming and options available, and maybe even a little how-to on how to do some of these, and we'll maybe do that in a week or two. We'll get a couple other people together, and perhaps the community, and kind of, because if I can't speak to Tabletopia, I'm sure I know people who can, so we can have that and kind of talk people through, and hopefully, it's a great time to try a game too, because people can watch your money, and they can watch it. If you make mistakes, it can be easily found, and I swear I don't make these many mistakes when I play a real game in person, but I feel like every round something happens that I screwed up. Like, I upgraded that. Oh, you couldn't do that. And it's just like the dumbest things. And I'm like, I wonder what actually happens during a game. Am I getting away with that, or are you catching me a lot earlier? So Ambie, what are you doing? I mean, now you have a special circumstance, so you weren't gaming a lot beforehand. You were trying to get some in, but what's life like now, and what's kind of in the works?
So right now, I'm not really playing much. I haven't been playing much for the last 6 months because I have twins that are about 6 months old. Coincidence. Yeah. So like, even online gaming I wouldn't be able to do, but I'm like Tony, I don't like online gaming. I like the interaction live. So like, I might like, if I had time, I might want to do a live online game, but I also don't like looking at the game on the screen versus like on the table, because for me it's easier for me to comprehend everything when it's on the table for some reason.
So what you need to do is you need to have Toby take a TV and put it down so that you can have the board on on as your tabletop, and then that way you can kind of sit there and maybe you can scale it right, and you can play with tiles on other people's turns so you can see how it works. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, speaking about online 18xx, Toby has been making an online 18xx website. So he's trying to make it so you can play 18xx online, real time or async. So he made rollingstock.net, which is to play Rolling Stock, which is a card game that's kind of 18xx inspired.
Right.
So it's but now he's making similar experience for 18xx games, and he's working on 1889 right now, and he wants it to be like full rule enforcement and fast to play.
Wow.
So he has almost all the rules now, I think. He nodded.
That's a big job.
Yeah, he's been working on it a lot. So that's pretty exciting.
So 80 is not coming anytime soon with all the rules it has.
There's a lot of things in 80.
That's
but
awesome.
I think eventually he'll be making more like different games too, and because
Yeah, once you
89
have
is an
the
interesting
engine.
one with not too many rules. So
The other thing I love is one of the I've been watching him kind of develop this and post about it. And one of the cool things he does is when you want to upgrade tiles, like nowadays we have to go to a bin and drag it over, and then we have to spin it, and it's difficult to because then you always grab the wrong Y. I always grab the wrong Y tile. Like it's the dumbest thing, right? The straight with the joint. I never grab the right one.
yeah.
But what he has is he literally, when you click on the tile to upgrade it, or you click on a blank space, it just shows you all the options available and kind of does like a ring, and you just pick. So you don't have to sit there and guess and figure, and you're just like, well, because God help me when I get to Browns, if I have a lot of tile options, I look at that and it just looks like spaghetti, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I struggle. So I love that innovation. So keep your eye out for that. So
what's the story there? Will it be, in the near future, you think?
Toby, what's the timing on it?
Yeah, so I'm gonna start doing demos this week. I already started doing demos.
Oh.
And I'm probably gonna
Wicked.
Oh, you
release
can.
1 or 2 weeks.
All right. Did you hear that, or I can say it?
you can repeat it.
Yeah, so he's already started doing demos, and he's thinking of releasing it in 1 or 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
Wow,
So
that is cool. What's
Yeah.
it? What is it called?
It's going to be 18xx.games, right? So that's like
Cool.
the website.
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm just
So-
wrote that
It's not
down. No, yeah, but I will be checking.
Right?
Just check every day.
Very well could be. Awesome. So this has been a lot of fun. Do you all have anything to add at all at this point?
Well, I hope that in the not too distant future, all of the talk about COVID-19 and gaming online will be confusing to some.
Yes.
Because it no longer is relevant.
We can only hope. Unfortunately, tracks got canceled.
And Chattanooga, so it
and
sucks.
Chattanooga. At the moment, Tracks East is still on. So Labor Day weekend, we got a summer. So we'll make that call probably midsummer when we have better prognosis and understand what's on. My friend's derailed, I think got derailed or moved completely. So, we're losing a lot of our train cons this year. So hopefully that is going to bounce back. So.
Yeah, we have big plans for the next tracks. It's going to be bigger and better and stronger than ever. We have a bigger venue and everything, so
awesome.
Won't have to limit the attendance, so anybody can come. So it's going to be fantastic.
Amazing. Well, hopefully I can make it this time. We'll see.
You will.
Absolutely. All right. So, Ambie, if people want to find you on the internet, follow you, see what you do, see what you post out, because you are still, you're not super active, but you still do a lot of stuff, and I see some songs pop out every now and then.
Yeah, so I'm Ambie Rona on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere. My screen name is Ambie Rona, pretty much. I also have a podcast called Board Game Blitz. And so I talk about games I've been playing on that podcast. And on the Dice Towers YouTube channel is where all my videos go now. So I have a couple of more 18xx videos like planned. I just haven't gotten around to finishing them.
Awesome. Cool.
Very nice.
And Tony, where can people find you, sir?
Well, as it says right down there, Twitter, it's the only social media I do, A Fryer Games, and Board Game Geek, Tony Fryer. But that's about it.
Awesome. And I'm Chris Whitpan. I do all the at-wheel tapping on the Twitter, so you feel free to shoot me a line. I also do at Game All Nite Show. If you want to send anything there, you can do that as well. So, you know what? Thank you both for being on. This was a ton of fun. perhaps we shall try and do an online game at some point. I think that'd be fun. We obviously have the setups for it.
Yes.
So hopefully that will get us through, and hopefully your time spent, if you're listening to this and it's during that isolation time, hopefully you are handling it well and your family as well. And you'll be more than happy to know we are going to continue doing this. So you can enjoy that. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Check us out at wheeltapping.com. That should send you to our site, and you can download the podcast, go to the YouTubes. We do things. We're at places. We do stuff. So, and also look to your feeds. If we're going to do a special, I suspect it'll be in a week or two. I think we want to do it while it's timely and everybody is, trying to adjust to the current normal, as it were.
Yes.
So, as we develop routines that don't involve a ton of baking. Oh my goodness. I've gone through more flour in this month than I have in a year. Oh my goodness. So I need to do something else. My wife she's not going to like me because I'm going to be a house. By the end. The freshman 50 is going to, yeah. But that's what happens when you bake, kids. Thank you so much, and we'll check at you next time on Wheel Tapping.
Where we all
bring something
to the table.
Pull up a chair
at punchboardmedia.com.